Hey, welcome to Yamamoto Video Pro Staff Tips. Once again, this time we've got a Duke's mixture for you. Got a little something of everything. Today we're going to talk about some of the subjects that we get asked so many questions on. And the number one item on the list, baby, that's color. It's almost always color. What I'm going to do is march you through a basic series of color choices. What some of the big boys have told me that works well for them, and we'll see if it doesn't give you some type of a systematic approach to choosing a starting place for colors. The next thing we're going to talk about, I'm not sure what the order is, but somewhere in there, we're going to Texas rig a bait or two, possibly a cut-tail worm, one of the 7 series, some of the most basic of rigging tips. Then we're going to look at a technique that one of our pro staffers used in the Ozarks to vacuum up about 8 grand one weekend when he Texas rigged a 9S. That's a baby Cinco, using the bait in a style we never designed it for. And last but certainly not least, we're going to talk about the value of having a high salt content in a plastic bait and how we think it'll work in your favor. So join me. We'll see what we can learn. We're going to visit just a few minutes about demystifying color choices. With over 100 custom blended colors at your disposal, my goodness, how do you know what to use? How do you know what to even start with? Well, I think I can help you with that just a little bit. And a good way to do this is to correlate it to a toolkit, because that's all it amounts to. Hey, I got my toolkit right here, pal. I got me a crescent wrench and a screwdriver and 2 kinds of screwdrivers and a pair of pliers. You know, now this is the same basic high-tech toolkit that is found in most of those kitchen drawers. You know the one I'm talking about, the one in the kitchen where all the stuff gets thrown in there. But most of the little repairs around the house, well, you can usually do most of it with a crescent and pliers and two types of screwdrivers. That's getting pretty scientific, but your basic toolkit covers most of what my uses are, because, my goodness, I'm not God's gift to Mr. Goodwrench. But you know, a professional can't make his living with some basic tools, but a fisherman starting out can. And what I want you to think about is a basic toolkit of color choices. So let's put the tools away for a minute and talk about colors. You know, I use 3 basic approaches when it comes to color. I use something sparkly, you know, something that might mimic a bait fish, whether it's a Cisco or a chub or a threadfin shad or a gizzard shad, something sparkly in the water to mimic a bait fish swimming. Now, it could be an 036, which is a cream white, like this little Ika right here, or it could be a 031, which is blue pearl with silver fleck. Man, I really like that in clear water. But both of these things are essentially in the same color family. I also use something of a browny greeny tone. Now what we got here is a nice little skirted, twin-tail skirted grub. This color 140, that's cinnamon with green fleck. Man, that's a great color. I've caught so many fish at Lake Powell in the desert southwest lakes with that color exactly mimicking a bluegill. But you know what? It also mimics a crawfish particularly well. Here's another one of those browny, greeny type colors. Sort of a go anywhere color, and one of our most popular. This is 208. This is a watermelon base color with a red fleck and a black fleck. But both of these colors are in the same general color family. That's 2. We've got a shad mimicking family and possibly a bluegill or a crawfish mimicking colors. Both of those, while those are very different, they are very similar. The next one I use is a trigger color, or at least that's the way I think about it. I don't know about your water. Chartreuse, man, don't leave home without it. That is one of the go anywhere, do anything colors. Now here we got a 156. This is chartreuse with black pepper. And then the really gaudy chartreuse, 169. Oh, that's got chartreuse flake and green flake and a chartreuse base, got some gold flake. I don't know what all colors. That's my favorite. I like that really bright color because when I'm using the trigger type colors, I'm trying to take advantage of the very, very aggressive nature of the fish. They're in the mood to chase. Maybe they're keying on the little chartreuse tips on the fins and tail of a bluegill. You ever seen bluegill in clear water? It's one of the things you first notice is how bright green the tips of their fins and their tail is. Maybe that's what the fish are doing, keying on those snack-sized bluegill 2 or 3 months after the spawn. You know, if they're doing that, chartreuse is hard to beat. You know, we talk about the basic toolkit. When we walk into a mechanic shop where you got all those journeyman type mechanics, well, you wouldn't feel too good about taking your new Lexus in there and having a guy work on your Lexus with 2 screwdrivers, a pair of pliers, and a crescent wrench. Those guys got those big roll-away toolboxes, and they have specific tools for every specific job. It makes them much more efficient. And of course, that's what it's all about. There's no difference in that and choosing colors for your fishing. You can get a lot of work done with a basic toolkit, and that's what we got laid out here. But you know, if you're a true journeyman is always looking for those little ways to enhance his effectiveness and his efficiency. That's the key. Now, while a particular color family may work reasonably well in any occasion where you're trying to mimic that bluegill or a crawfish, there may be times when a specific color change, and choosing the 208 as an example because it has a little red fleck in there. That little red fleck may make all the difference. That's a specialty tool. What I'd like you to do, though, is when you're first starting out, choose 2 or 3 color families, a basic approach, and then expand from there. In the same fashion that as a kiddo, you wouldn't start out with $25,000 worth of tools in a snap-on roll-away. You'd start with a basic toolkit. Do the same thing when it comes to colors. Then look for those little strange, interesting things that occur from time to time. You know, I specifically remember one day when we had a big school of smallmouth bass holding on an offshore, it was a ledge, topped out at about 25 feet. Of course, out west, you fish in fairly deep water. We've been working those fish for, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours and had caught a load of smallmouth from, 1 to 2.5, maybe a 3-pounder here and there. And those fish quit us. I mean, they quit us. We were using a chartreuse grub, split shotting that thing at about 30 feet. Boy, the bite was regular. We were working around this flooded ledge and had been doing so for quite a while. And the bite just quit, just for the heck of it, because we were dealing with active fish. We changed colors, took the chartreuse off, and put on a tomato red pepper, which is a bright, gaudy color, and turned those fish on again. They bit for another 2 hours on the tomato red. So sometimes those color changes, it's just like a tool in the toolbox. Sometimes you want to choose those to make a difference or maybe turn fish on that have been biting but quit you. But give that a try. Use a basic approach. That's a great starting point. And you're thinking bait fish, crawfish, or aggressive fish, trigger color type baits. Give that a try and see if it doesn't help. What we got here is the 7 series. We call it the cut-tail worm. It's a little fuller bodied than our original 4-inch worm and has something of a paddle tail. Boy, this one has been hot in Japan, making pretty serious inroads here in the States. I'm going to show you a basic Texas rigging method on the cut-tail worm, and I'm utilizing a 2-aught Sugoi hook, which is an offset shank hook specifically designed for text-posed rigging, which is sort of a variation of the Texas rig. So let's see what we can rig up here on the cut-tail worm with a 2-aught hook. Real careful to insert the hook point in the center of the body, and we want to pull this down just about 1/4 inch. That's going to correspond to the length of the offset on the Sugoi hook. We just pull it simply out the side of the body, slide it up the hook, and then turn the hook, turning the hook point toward the body of the worm. Now we're in position 2 and ready to execute the text posed. Now, while with a normal Texas rigging program, you'd bend the worm and pull the hook up into the worm, and that'll work with a Sugoi, but if you rig it that way, you're not taking full advantage of everything the hook can do for you. If you'll lay the hook alongside the worm and use your thumb to measure the length of the hook, then bend the worm and stick the hook point side to side straight through the worm. Then when you pull the worm up, it lies right alongside the point of the hook. Then all we have to do is push the hook up, the bait up just a little bit, and I'll let it recoil back onto the point of the hook. And we have skin hooked the point. You can throw this into the very heaviest of cover. I got this rigged with a little 1/8 ounce sliding weight. And if you're not pegging your weight in a standard Texas rig, there we got the 7 series cut tail worm, Texas rigged on a 2/0 Sugoi hook. Man, looks good enough to eat. Now son, this rigging tip ought to jerk a half hitch in your tail. This one came from my buddy Ron Foss, inside liner from Lead Hill, Arkansas, right in the heart of the Ozarks, and he and his buddies used this rigging method to win over $4,000 2 weekends ago. I'm going to show you how Ron and his buddy rigged up the 9S Cinco and just destroyed those Ozark Clearwater bass. This is Ron's rigging method, and one we never perceived or conceived when the 9S Cinco was designed. The Cinco is basically a jerk worm, meant to be rigged to expose, possibly even wacky wormed, but never with a pegged 1/8 ounce sinker. Now this is what Ron and his buddies did, and simply just rigged the thing Texas rig Texposed, where you bite off about 1/4 inch of the worm, slide it up on the offset of the hook. We've talked about this before. Puts the hook shank and the hook point parallel to the body of the bait. Just what the hook was designed to do. We're going to measure the length of the hook, stick it straight through the side of the bait, so that when we pull it back into position, the bait is right alongside the point of the hook. Now I'm going to go ahead, because Ron designed this method to fish flooded cover there on Bull Shoals and those Ozark type lakes. So now we've started the rigging method, and this would be a great rigging right here if you were going to jerk worm the 9S Cinco. But I'm going to show you what they did. They pegged a 1/8 ounce sinker just like this. Now if you don't know how to peg a sinker, use a flat toothpick like this and stick it into the hole in the back of the weight. Wedge it in there. Come on, darling. Wedge it in there tight, and you simply break off the toothpick. Now we've got a little plug of wood in the hole in the sinker that when it gets wet will swell up and tighten. Now we slide the weight, and it's quite a bit of resistance to get it slid down on the front of the bait. Now we've got a Texas rig pegged sinker that won't slide off the hook area. Now this is the bait that Ron Foss and his buddies were throwing in flooded cover, 15 to 30 feet of water on Bull Shoals and Beaver Lake in Arkansas as well. 2 weekends ago they won $4 grand throwing the little 9S Cinco with a pegged 1/8 ounce sinker. Ron said, man, if they could see this bait, they would eat it. I'm going to talk here a minute about salt content. You know, when you look at our bait, it doesn't look salty. Many of the hand-poured worms that I've seen out of Southern Cal, son, they got salt all over them, so where's the salt? You know, it's really, if you can't touch the thing, it's hard to know any of these things. But what I want to show you is where the salt is in this bait. You can rub your hand on the bait, and the salt, it is just full of it. It's all over my fingers. And when the bass bite this bait, what they want to do is they want to put it back in the crusher area and start chewing this bait. And what do? They get the taste of salt instantly. The salt is not added on. The salt is through and through admixture, a part of the plastic. So the more the bait becomes abraded, frankly, the more attractive it is to the fish. Now, buddy, that's a salty grub. Well, with over 100 colors, it can be confusing, but I hope we've helped you out to show you that it doesn't have to be. You can keep your color choices within certain basic families for basic usage patterns. Then, like the other top pros, you can refine your color choices from there. The rigging tip on the 7 worm, the cut tail, that is a great Carolina rig bait. And the Texpose method, if you haven't used it, I think it will equate to more fish in the boat for you. So you want to give that one a shot. Did you like Ron Foss's rigging tip? That was for the 9S Cinco. Man, he stroked them there at Bull Shoals, I'll tell you. And the salt. Hey, man, you can feel it, you can taste it. And we're not the only ones. The fish seem to appreciate it too. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.